Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland, doing the introduction to my weekly newsletter for March 15th, 2019. I've given you a couple of quite big articles under my Electric Scotland news section. One is about the National Trust for Scotland Foundation USA. They announced today that the recipient of its 2019 Great Scot Award is Andy Scott, award-winning sculptor of the Kelpies and renowned artworks across the UK and internationally. So, a little more background to that. And then the second chunk of information I've given you is from the Scottish Studies Foundation in Toronto, because they've got various meetings on which you might like to attend. One of them is a meeting of the Ur Club, and there's a link to learn more about that. Then there's also the Scottish Business Studies Spring Colloquium, which will be held on April the 6th at Knox College. A lot of good speakers there. And then finally, there's an article, basically it's giving you a link so you can listen to the radio program. It's basically CBC's The Backlist. It's a radio series about Canadian novels that have fallen out of public memory or never got the attention they deserve in the first place. And basically Douglas Gibson is the one that's doing the interview. And it's very interesting, so hopefully you might want to read at that. Okay, so on to the news items. Well, obviously the big news is the ongoing disaster of Brexit. I don't know, if we have another election, I hope a whole tranche of MPs do not get reselected. I hope they lose their jobs. I mean, it's ridiculous, to be honest, what's going on. It's just a small nightmare. And we pay these people a good salary, for God's sake. And they're getting to the point where they think they want a second referendum because they can't decide. I mean, we're paying them to do the job. We also told them in the referendum we wanted to leave. And yet you've got sick, horrible, nasty MPs that just don't want to listen to the British people. So I hope they'll get their comeuppance at the next election. And I hope a whole swath of them lose elections. It's disgusting, to be honest with you. Anyway, the first story I've got for you this week is Scottish Stock Exchange launch is on track. It says Scotland's first stock exchange since the early 1970s could be launched within months, with a number of companies already in talks about plans to use it to raise funds. The story is how to survive and thrive after a no-deal Brexit. Of course, it doesn't look like we're going to get a no-deal Brexit, but you never know. But if it might be, then you might want to have a wee read of that. Then, why Scotland matters in Russia's cyber war games. What is the importance of Scotland to Russia, and what is the Kremlin trying to achieve there? Kind of intriguing, that one. It's a violation of our rights. Expats complain of unfair system that leaves them with frozen pensions. I might add, I'm included in that because I chose to come to Canada and my pension's frozen. If I got to the USA, I'd be getting normal increases for inflation. I mean, I will say that I don't think that's right. I mean, the Queen should be told to get her act together because she's the head of the Commonwealth. Seems if you're in the Commonwealth countries, you don't get an inflation indexed pension. It's ridiculous. It's just very unfair. I didn't really realise it, but certainly I'm now experiencing it. Okay, Highland Games to break with men-only traditions. It says women will be able to compete in a range of events at Scotland's Highland Games after organisers gave in to the pressure by campaigners to promote a gender balance. So we should have women tossing the caber. Whether they'll get a slightly lighter caber, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Then laughter is the best medicine is the next story. as fabulous clown doctors give kids in Scotland's hospitals lots to smile about. It's nice pictures there as well. Then the WTO no-deal Brexit is now the only way to honour the referendum result, as Attorney General Geoffrey Cox attempts to procure a legally binding change to the backstop appeared to have proven futile. The last hope for Theresa May's deal is slipping away. Reportedly, the Cabinet already anticipates another crushing Commons defeat when the vote is held tomorrow. And of course, there was another crushing defeat. Offshore wind offshored. It says Scotland has been taking a big game in potential for renewable energy, while others have been getting on with it. And those others have developed supply chains which now have scale and efficiency. What it's actually telling us is that while Scotland's been very successful in wind energy, they've been very unsuccessful at actually producing any of the hardware for it. Pretty pathetic in my view, really pathetic. That should have been a multi-million-dollar or pound benefit to Scotland. Yet we've given it all away to the rest of the world, which just shows how Nicola Sturgeon is so stupid she should resign. Anyway, fracking could cut Britain's gas imports to zero by early 2030s. It says fracking Britain's shale gas reserves could cut the country's imports of gas to zero by the early 2030s, an industry group said on Monday. And if you look at how successful the fracking industry has been in the States, I think the States is actually now independent. It's the largest producer of oil at the moment. So good on them. Online voting. It says now Estonia teaches the world a lesson in electronic elections. In this month's Estonian parliamentary elections, a whopping 44% of the ballot was cast using e-voting. I mean, Canada needs to get its act together on this as well, really do. Row over hydro projects in Skyfall Glen. The 3 proposed schemes are opposed by a campaign to save Glenetif. The kindness judges turning courts inside out, says 2 American judges who argue that people who come before criminal courts should be treated with more compassion and kindness have arrived in Scotland for a week-long visit. Britain and Brexit in chaos. Parliament rejects May's EU deal again. The wee light-hearted one, meet Cara, the parrot who enjoys trekking and teasing dogs. Says Cara's a 7-year-old African grey parrot who joins her owners for walks in the Scottish Highlands. Some good video there. Is nuclear fusion finally moving beyond the realm of science fiction? It says free energy, interstellar travel, terraforming Mars, the possibilities of nuclear fusion are boundless. Will the EU let Britain delay Brexit? It says Brussels is unlikely to say no to an extension, but everything depends on why the UK is asking for a delay. I mean, that's one of the things. It might be okay for a short delay, but it might be if we want a longer delay, then of course we're going to have to go into the elections for MSPs, not MSP, MEPs rather. I mean, it's just a nightmare, it really is. They're just pathetic, so many of these. And the Prime Minister herself, I mean, she's at the heart of the problem, because she negotiated a terrible deal with the EU, which locks us into the EU, and we won't get out unless the EU give us permission to come out. That's the heart of the problem. Her deal is pathetic in the extreme, and she keeps focusing on it time after time after time, and keeps getting hit back, hit back, hit back. I think she's got Alzheimer's or something. I think she needs to just go. Just get rid of the bitch. She's terrible. I'm furious with her. I really am. Pathetic. the most pathetic Prime Minister we've ever had in the whole history of our country. Okay, MPs vote by a majority of 211 to seek delay to EU departure. It means the UK may not now leave on 29th of March as previously planned. And then finally, Trump, surprised at bad Brexit negotiations. Trump told reporters a second vote would be unfair on the people who won, and that the Irish border issue was one of the most complex Brexit issues. Okay, so that's the news stories I got for you this week. On to Electric Canadian. I've had the Canadian Archive report for 1899 and the Canadian Horticulturalist, volume 17, 1894 is now up. I found also the Canadian Practitioner. I've added volumes 1 and 10 and a link to other copies on the Internet Archive. Equally well, I found Canadian Railway and Marine World, so I've added volumes for 1918 and 1919, and again links to other copies on the Internet Archive. Then a book for you, Knight Errant of the Wilderness, Tales of the Explorers of the Great Northwest by Morton H. Long, published in 1925. Then I have The Story of Butler's Rangers and the Settlement of Niagara by Ernest Cruikshanks, published in 1893. Then I have Sir Charles Tupper, it's by the Honourable J.W. Longley, and I've added him to our Makers of Canada series. And then England and Canada, it's by Sanford Fleming. I noticed actually I don't have Sanford Fleming in the Electric Canadian site, it's actually on the Electric Scotland site, and that's really because he wasn't a Canadian per se, but he certainly did a lot to establish Canada on the world map. And he wrote a book about travelling between England and Canada. And it's actually very interesting. I enjoyed the read of that. So you might want to have a wee read yourself. Then finally a wee article from Conrad Black. The Liberals have stumbled their way into a disaster. And I might add that big Lavalin affair that's going on at the moment is still dominating the news headlines in Canada. It's not going away, and Trudeau's, I think, trying to ignore it now, hoping that we'll all ignore it, but we'll just have to see what happens there. But not good for Trudeau, that's for sure. Then on to the Electric Scotland section. I've got the Scottish Review up. I've added volume 28, which is the July to October 1896 edition. I will just add these Scottish Reviews, you know, they've got a big index page at the beginning, and if you read it, you can just scroll down to whatever page an article is on that you might find of interest and have a read. As I say, you're not going to read them all, but there's usually maybe a half a dozen at least articles that are really worth having a read at. Okay, so next story is Global Britain, a 21st Century Vision. It says Global Britain implies a national global strategy to express the nation's values and interests beyond our shores. That's a very up-to-date article, and so I've got permission to download it and put it on the site. Then the Gordon Clan. Wow, I spent quite a lot of time on the Gordon Clan this time. I don't know if you know, but I have gradually been working my way as I got time through the clans to see if there's any new updated information that's appeared for any of them. And I just happened to get to the Gordons this time round, and when I did my usual searches I found, I think about 11 different books about Gordons. So I've mentioned that the new material starts from the Gordons in Forfarshire, and then read further down from there to get all the 11 books that I've added. So I hope if you're a Gordon you're going to really enjoy all that. Then I have Folklore. It says Superstitious Beliefs in the West of Scotland Within This Century by James Napier. It was produced in 1879. And then I found the Folklore Journal. It's in the Book of Folklore I mentioned above. There's a reference to the Folklore Journal, in which in Volume 1 there's an article by the author. So I managed to find this edition and now make it available for you to read. And then Folk Medicine, a chapter in the history of culture by William George Black, published in 1883. So he's a Scot. Good Scottish information in that. Then Calendar of Letters and Papers, says relating to the affairs of the borders of England and Scotland, preserved in Her Majesty's Public Record Office in London. It's been edited by Joseph Bain in 2 volumes. Now, I've actually learned about that because I was having a wee chat in our community, and I've actually given you a link to the post about that, because in the post there's a Time Team history video in which they're searching for Armstrongs and Elliots, and doing the research they actually quoted and showed you pictures of these 2 volumes, because they went through the index and that found the reference which gave them more information to go and seek. So as it was mentioned, I thought, I haven't got a copy of that. I went and did a search and found the 2 volumes. So that was quite a nice wee find, that, and you might want to watch the video as well. Then Florentius Volosanus, I'm sure that's not how you pronounce it, but he was a Scottish philosopher whom we've added to our Significant Scots page. He's actually quite a character, this, and he was very good friends with some of the major clerical figures throughout Europe and also in Britain. So I thought you might just be interested in that one, but certainly he deserves to be in our Significant Scots section. Byways Among Books by David J. Mackenzie, published in 1900s, another one I've got for you. Interesting information in there as well. Oh yeah, and I've been doing a wee bit of an update. I did an update in my own mini bio, and to give some background on how I've been searching for books and how I go about searching for books. I've also done a wee update to my Canadian journal, because a few things have happened just recently, and I thought I'd just add that in, because I still add little bits to the journal from time to time. Then we have Lieutenant John Gordon of the Dundas family. He was massacred at Patna in 1763 in India, and there's an interesting wee account there of him. So, and it's also, I've actually put it up in our India section. And then Early Travels in Scotland by P. Hume Brown. P. Hume Brown is an extremely good historian, and he was researching to see who had visited Scotland in the old days, and who'd written about it, because quite a lot of famous people visited Scotland, but they never wrote about what they saw. So he's been trying to find all the people that wrote in anything about Scotland, and so he's done a good job of editing and bringing it all together there. And then the final article is Best Newfangled Family Tree. I got it in the April 2019 section 2 issue, and best giving you a wee bit of information about what's in that. She says, "Hi everyone, hope you're all ready for St. Patrick's Day. If you are in Atlanta and see the Clan Buchanan parading with a brand new and gorgeous banner," he said, "my Tom just made that for them. Give them an extra cheer, please." This year has good news from Clan MacAlpine with their brand new commander. We also have sad news with the death of former Lord Lion David Seller. And we've celebrated with April Fool fun and the marriage of our dear friends Alan McNutt and Paul Arnetti. And there's lots more to read and enjoy. Okay, and the story takes over half the newsletter. It's an article I extracted from this week's Scottish Review. It's Scotland under the Roundheads. So in the last issue of the Scottish History Society's publications, it's included a volume of much and varied interest, Scotland under the Commonwealth. It's 1651 to 3. So it's interesting. If you feel I've got a few spelling mistakes in there, you can always bring up this week's review and read it yourself. But I've done a reasonable job of OCRing it out for you. Okay, so that's basically it for this week. Hope you enjoy it and learn something new. Okay. So as always, I'll put a link to the actual newsletter where you get all the links to all these stories that I've mentioned. Okay, take care. Hope to hear from you and have a good weekend when it comes.